behalf of Dean Farshad Fatui, the Dean of the College of Engineering, we want to roll out the red carpet for our entrepreneurs in the community. And so we'd like you to take notice of this particular card, because this is kind of our invitation to reach out to entrepreneurs in the community and ask you to join with us at Wayne State College of Engineering as we start building programs to better serve your area of interest and create opportunities for collaboration. One of them is establishing a technology entrepreneurs network where we bring together a number of very successful entrepreneurs, companies that are out there. Some of you know that are alumni, like Jim Anderson from Urban Science, Pete Carmanos from CompuWare, and so forth, and create a synergy around new technology in the city. We have wonderful support. We have, matter of fact, another alumni member, Shell Aurora from Vineyard Capital, who's here as well, and they're constantly asking us about new technology, new areas of research faculty are working on, and things that they can be involved in to help participate, to fund, and to create connections. So I hope everyone is not only here to learn about new opportunities, sees Wayne State College of Engineering as an opportunity, but also would like to extend connections that they may have or that they may be able to make for other entrepreneurs. So again, I thank you for taking the time to join us. We welcome you here at the College of Engineering. Please email me so we can formally get you tied into the network and begin to expose some of the new and interesting things we're doing. For instance, our rapid prototype fabrication lab. And then, twice a month, we invite people from the community, the company, or faculty to toss out a pitch to engineers about something that they may need. And so if you have an idea and you need someone to develop a mobile app for you, and this is a great way to reach out to students, grad students, PhD students, faculty, or other entrepreneurs. This will become a venue for where you can reach out quickly in that manner to entertain some of those ideas. Again, thank you, and have a great time.
Thank you, Robert. I'm here now to introduce Lindsay Venegas, and she is our moderator for the evening. And she briefly, she wants to say a little bit more about herself. I'll let her do that. But briefly, she's the Ideal Group's Chief Marketing Officer, which accounts for more than $200 million in annual revenue. She has expanded their promotional efforts beyond traditional marketing and advertising methods to include innovative methods of media reach. And specifically, she has focused on search engine optimization, search engine marketing campaigns, interactive social media, including blogs and other types of social media. And with that, whether using traditional or new marketing strategies, she ensures that the Ideal Group conveys a cohesive brand, image, and a clearly communicated message. So we have her here tonight to be asking our panelists questions to make sure that this is a very interactive, focused, after work event. So we want this to be very interactive, and that's why we wanted to have Lindsay, who is going to hopefully ask lots of questions and provoke very good answers from our panelists. So please, Lindsay, thank you so much.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. I have a really loud voice, so I don't want to blow your eardrums out. So, but anyways, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining. Tonight, I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I'd like everybody to try to keep the answers down to 3 minutes or less. So before I get started, I'd like to, I'm just going to introduce your name, and at that time, if you could just say a little bit about yourself. First one I'd like to introduce is Massimo Galvini. He's the president of Livio Radio.
Thanks for having me. My name is Massimo. I'm the president of Livio Connect. Livio, the company Livio Connect, is a B2B technology. So what we do is very simple. We allow applications on a smartphone to connect and be controllable by the car radio, so that your phone can stay safely in your pocket, on your wife's purse, and you can control and use and enjoy those apps that you are familiar with, that are sitting on your phone and you use daily. Again, from your ad unit, from your radio. We are a 15 people company in Ferrodale, Michigan, so a few miles north from here. Sept. We were founded in '08, about 5 years ago, and yeah, excited to be here.
I enjoyed reading your bio. I saw some stuff about Rage Against the Machine and all kinds of stuff. It was pretty interesting. The second person I'd like to introduce is Ralph Mueller. He's the Director of Ecosystems Europe.
That's me. For the Eclipse Foundation. You forgot this.
What?
I'm the Director of Ecosystems for the Eclipse Foundation.
Oh, I apologize.
No problem. So let's keep it intact. Who knows Eclipse? Who doesn't know it? Give me your business card, guys. So yes, I work for the Eclipse Foundation. It started off as a project to develop a new generation of software tools. Started off by IBM in the Java space in 2001. Later on, many other companies joined the bandwagon, including companies like Oracle, Compuware, etc., etc., etc. I started working for the foundation. It's a team of 14 people managing this ecosystem of about $5 billion revenue per year. I started working in 2006, and my responsibility is that I help the European ecosystem to evolve, to make contributions, to provide support, financial and other support, to keep this organization going and this project prospering. What I mostly do in the last couple of years is work with the European automotive industry and the European aerospace industry that have become, on one side, large adopters of Eclipse technology for building their safety critical environments, and on the other end, of course, becoming more and more large contributors. And maybe you can touch this tonight a little more, what that means and what the impact of something like this is.
Our third panelist is John Hader. He's the investment manager at GM Ventures.
Hello, everyone. As she mentioned, I'm an investment manager with GM Ventures. GM Ventures is the strategic corporate venture capital arm of General Motors. So basically, we were formed to seek out young, innovative companies that have really breakthrough technologies, create relationships with them, invest in them, provide them the capital they need to continue development of their technologies, while at the same time helping to foster relationships within our technical community with those companies, with the idea that ultimately those technologies will end up in our vehicles. We focus on a number of different areas. One of them is probably the reason why I was invited here tonight, one being infotainment. So this is where information and entertainment and human-machine interface all intersect within the vehicle. So we're looking at all different types of breakthrough technologies while at the same time trying to make them sure that they're safe for vehicle use. Some of the other interesting areas that we focus in on are automotive clean tech, which can be anything from breakthrough technologies for the internal combustion engine to advanced lithium-ion battery technologies. We also look at smart materials and other business opportunities, a good example of which would be our investment in Relay Rides, which is a peer-to-peer car sharing company. So really anything that's automotive related that could be strategic to GM that offers a really interesting breakthrough that could help us build and design the best vehicles in the world and give us an advantage over our competition. Those are the types of technologies that we're interested in.
Our next panelist would be Chris Stallman. He's the associate, and I apologize if I mispronounced this, but Fontanilus Partners, is that right?
Close.
Okay.
Close partners. We get that question pretty frequently.
I apologize.
No problem. As you mentioned, I'm Chris Stallman, an associate on the investment team at Fontanilus Partners, and what we are is we're a strategic investment firm located here in Detroit. And what's notable about us and frequently comes up as one of the first things that people notice is our executive founding team. Includes a lot of people with some pretty deep automotive experience. So our founders include Bill Ford, executive chairman of Ford Motor Company, Mark Schultz, the former president of international operations for Ford Motor Company, and also Ralph Booth, who's more of a background in media and telecom. He's scaled and exited companies on 3 different continents. So that's really the core founding team of our company. And we were founded to look at really innovative companies across the next generation mobility landscape. So companies that kind of fall into the transportation technology space. And a lot of the companies that we look at are companies that are somehow tied to the automotive landscape, but they don't necessarily have to be. So we're looking at other companies that kind of benefit from that ecosystem, such as companies that are focused on more consumer mobile technologies. So for example, we have a couple portfolio companies that are engaged in parking payments. Obviously, we all hate beating the meter with change, so why don't we make that process more streamlined and digital? So we've looked at companies in that space, and we have other investments across family safety and security that has some applications within the automotive landscape. So we're looking at not just the automotive space, but really that whole ecosystem that kind of benefits and transacts off of that. So we've been founded since 2009, and we've funded to date 9 companies and are looking to make more investments in other innovative companies, whether they're here in Detroit or elsewhere globally.
And our final panelist is Kyle Walworth. He's the Senior Manager, Global Audio Infotainment Architecture for Visteon.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks for having me. So again, my name is Kyle, and I have a couple of jobs, like probably many of you out there. One, I do all the hardware and software designs. My team does the advanced designs for all of Visteon's electronics, from information displays to capacitive touch center stacks to infotainment. But again, probably why I'm here is I also sit on the board of directors for a new group. It's a fairly new group, about 3 years old, called the Geneva Alliance. The Geneva Alliance was formed by really 8 forward-thinking companies, including GM, BMW, PSA, Delphi, Visteon, Intel, a couple others, Wind River. And the thought there was that in infotainment, in-vehicle infotainment, historically, every company has built the code from scratch every time. So BMW has put out numbers to say it costs between 60 and 100 million to develop an infotainment system. The majority of that code, nobody cares about. It's not differentiating. How do you route audio from a USB stick to your speakers? Nobody cares about.
In the old days, people, companies, organizations, they were developing from the bottom, and they were developing this. Pretty much what you mentioned before, everybody was developing its own IDI stack, etc., etc. So what open source really does, it gives you a stack. In most cases, or in the Eclipse case in particular, it gives you a stack of stuff that you can build on top of, pretty much like Jelly. So you can go and develop your components, the things that you really want to do, the interesting stuff for you and your client, and you use what is available. Why does open matter? Open matters for a couple of reasons. First of all, you want to be able to use it and to maybe modify it so that it exactly suits your needs. And you just cannot usually modify proprietary software. It's closed and you have no rights to it. You also want to extend it. You want to exchange stuff. You need it for your innovation. You need to adopt it to a platform. So that allows for open innovation. You can exchange your things with others and in-source other things from other companies. So we have seen in the AutoSAR project, for example, they were building tools for introducing AutoSAR to the automotive industry. It saved them about 1 year or 1.5 years in getting their prototypes running, just using Eclipse. That's an example from automotive. What was the other parts of your question?
I was typically like, will it have the same interface as a smartphone? How will that interface?
Well, Eclipse does not have an interface like a smartphone, no. But it has interfaces. It has well-defined interfaces. I think every good open source project can be judged by its well-defined interfaces and by the reliability of its interfaces. Because, let's say Eclipse, we have IBM as one of the founding companies. They ship about 150 products on top of it. If we go and screw with their interfaces, they will be after us, personally.
My next question is for you, Massimo. You just announced a deal with Chevy and the Video Connect technology. Could you tell us a little bit about the tune-in application in the Chevy Spark program? And also, can you let us know when it's expected to roll out?
Yeah, sure. I was ahead of myself a little bit. I talked about tuning, I guess. a few minutes ago. Again, it's a very good application that allows anybody for free to access thousands and thousands of radio stations from anywhere in the world, any kind of music, any kind of news, any kind of sports, anything you want. It's in radio. It's part of the TuneIn application. So General Motors in the Chevy Spark chose TuneIn as a great opportunity to improve the infotainment experience for their customers, and Livio Connect, our middleware, our technology, facilitated the TuneIn integration into the Chevy Spark. I think it's rolling out Q1. I don't know exactly the date, but Q1 next year, so it's right around the corner.
Great car too. With the convergence of auto electronics and technology in the cockpit, the user interface is becoming a lot more complicated. I mean, I feel like when you figure out how to use the radio, the HVAC, and then you have like your parents or your grandparents that are trying to use these new cars, it's really hard to use the technology. What needs to be done, in your opinion, to simplify the user interface and experience? And this is very open.
I'll start real quick.
Or just go and check out the new BMW iDrive.
Nice plug.
So the way we look at it is we know what consumers are used to, which is the radio. Again, going back to what I said earlier, that has been around for 90 years. We know people are used to it. We know that they know the buttons, the presets, the 6 presets. So that's safe. Kind of drifting away from that into more of a touch screen. That's going to be, I guess, more of a trial or will be a process. So we personally don't know exactly what the right answer is going to be, but to play on the safe side, the way we look at it, the closer is to the current use environment, the better it is from a safety and a user-friendly viewpoint.
A couple of comments I wanted to make too on this front that's very important. So right now, there are a number of regulatory agencies that step in, and they have certain rules that must be followed. So there's some general guidelines right now along the lines of any task has to be completed within 20 seconds at most, and the subtasks, which means your eyes go off the road to the knob that you have to turn, the button you have to press, have to be completed, and your eyes back on the road within 2 seconds. Those rules are actually going to get more stringent. It's going to drop to 15 seconds and 1.5 seconds for each of those. So one of the things that we're very focused on within the infotainment realm is not just kind of the information and entertainment we can get in, but the human-machine interface, new technologies. You referenced touch. That's a very key area for us, along with voice, gesture, eye gaze, any way that the human can interface with the vehicle in a safer manner, and keep their eyes on the road more than on the center stack as they're trying to control all of these new devices that are coming into the vehicle.
The next question is, with all the hype and talk about autonomous vehicles, when will vehicles and infrastructures be integrated and networked to enable autonomous driving? And Chris, would you like to take a stab at that one?
See if this works. Well, that's a tough question to answer. I think that's, I wish I knew the answer to that one. I'd have to imagine, though, that a lot of people be hopeful that it's right around the corner. In reality, given the automotive grade that things have to kind of stand to, I'd have to imagine we're at least 10 years away. With that said, I think what we'll start to see is progress towards that goal. We're not going to necessarily have the autonomous driverless vehicle, and I know that certainly Google's made a lot of progress on that side, but there's still quite a few limitations there. It still requires the driver to take control of the vehicle on a very regular basis, and that's something that's probably not going to pass muster at this point. But what we're going to see is this general transition of different V2B technologies, vehicle-to-vehicle technologies that will allow us to insert new safety features in the vehicle, whether it's intersection motion assist, which is essentially you can tell when a vehicle is coming through an intersection even if you can't see around the corner to see that vehicle. So we're going to start to see the vehicles getting a lot smarter, and they're already very aware. They're already equipped with endless sensors, it seems like, but what we're going to start to see is this real big focus on the safety side first, and then 10 years from now, we can probably start to think about having this conversation about whether or not the vehicle can truly be autonomous. But I think 10 years would be something that a lot of people would cheer about if it was that short.
I'll just add one quick and exciting thing here in Michigan. Out in Ann Arbor, there's the Center for Automotive Research, and they, in conjunction with governmental agencies, are setting up a 300-car smart grid system out in Ann Arbor. They allowed the everyday driver to apply. I applied. Hopefully I get it. I'll know soon, but I think there were over 5,000 applicants for 300 positions. But we should be getting real data right here in Michigan, which is very, very exciting.
So I guess taking your question, we should answer another question first. And the question is, why is there no steer-by-wire like in airplanes yet in cars? And I think the reason is, and this is a question that has to be answered before we talk about autonomous cars, because without steer-by-wire there is no autonomous cars. Right? You always need somebody to move a steering wheel. And I think when I talk about automotive people, and they're different over here, I don't know the situation here as well, they all tell me it's not a technical issue, it's really an issue of reliability, and it's an issue of we do not want to be the first guys to have a steer-by-wire car and run over a couple of people. So their process, it's an issue of processes, it's an issue of software, it's an issue of safety critical development that hasn't been resolved yet, and I think this is standing most in the way of also autonomous cars.
The only other thing I would add to that is it's not so much the matter of there's one missing link to it. GM has built autonomous vehicles. They're called the ENVs, electric network vehicles. The whole idea being that these are the vehicles that you would drive in the future, the city of the future, where everything is communicating with the infrastructure, is communicating with other vehicles, so on and so forth. It's detecting objects in the road. The problem is right now these technologies are wildly expensive. They're beyond the scope of what anyone in this room could afford to put all of those technologies in. And then you run into the issue of, it's going to take 10 plus years to replace the car park, the existing car park. So what do you do in the interim? If you start to, bring out these ENVs, for instance, how do they communicate with the 1983, Honda Civic, right? Exactly. They can't communicate. So I think what you're going to see, as Chris mentioned earlier, is the emergence of, kind of the baby steps. You're starting to see active cruise control. You're starting to see active braking, where these vehicles are detecting things in the road using cost-effective technologies that exist today to then kind of take over the vehicle and make it safer. And it's going to be baby steps, and it's going to take, unfortunately, probably multiple decades before we get to the point where we don't have to drive anymore. We can tell the vehicle where we want to go, and we can sit back and play on our iPad or whatever other device we want to. Oh yeah, you could, exactly.
Well, and you kind of lead into my next question, John, but has there been any discussion about how how these vehicles will integrate with like these 1980 vehicles, and like is there an aftermarket opportunity? I mean, have any of those type of ideas come out on the table yet?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the opportunity for aftermarket, but unfortunately, it's going to be one of those where I think there's going to have to be a strong push from the regulatory agencies to get infrastructure built out. We at GM have had meetings with agencies like regional transit authorities around the country, and not just to talk about vehicles, but to talk about really the city of the future and how buses are going to interact, how trains are going to interact. Cars don't need to be as big anymore, right? They can be literally personal pods, that do the small amount of driving that you need to do in a limited range, but when you need to travel further, get loaded up onto a train of some sort that rockets you, to the next city over. So those discussions are happening.
What buttons are being pushed more often on the screen? You can tailor those screens to be more intuitive for the user. That's one way I think that things are going. Another big push within the automotive and the tier ones is to, in a safe manner, represent the user interface similar to what people are used to on their own devices. So likes of MirrorLink or Real VNC will take your stream to your navigation from your smartphone and put it up onto the screen. You certainly don't want to be messing with small buttons such as Pandora, thumbs up, thumbs down. But again, I'm pitching my friends at Livio here. That's where they standardize that interface so that it can be presented in a safe and unified manner, regardless of what, say, internet radio solution, whether it's Mon, Stitcher, Pandora, or whatever. So there'll be this marriage of consumer UI in a safe manner, and if that isn't as abstract as you can get.
I guess when you think about 5 years from now, you think about the cutting edge of technology, you'll start to see some really, really cool things coming out at that point. But given the life cycle of the vehicle being, say, 15 years for them to work their way out of the system, 5 years from now, you'll start to see the technologies that you're really, starting to be adopted today, just in much larger, wider distribution formats. So you're going to see a lot more vehicles on the road with, mentioning having your interface with your phone, being able to be on your in-dash navigation, or even taking your in-dash navigation and putting it on your phone. You're going to start to see a lot more connectivity in that regard. I think also what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more data being overlaid onto, say, traction within the automotive industry and start to provide the user with more information that's in a hopefully non-distractive format. I think we've already got
GM's made over the last year alone. It's become a very high priority within GM, to the point where we actually have an entire standalone business unit now that's focused on infotainment and human-machine interface within the vehicle. You're going to start to see even more advanced connectivity. You'll start to see things like 4G in the vehicle. You'll start to see, which will provide you the connectivity that you need to get all the information that you need. So I don't have much more to offer above and beyond that. We're going to start to see some really, really neat interfaces and access to a lot of information. It'll be very similar, likely, to how you interface with your smartphones and your tablets today. But we've also got to make sure that it's in a safe manner, as we've all said, to prevent any of the distracted driving.
Okay, let me try something provocative here. I think there will be high-end UIs and high-end cars, and they are actually already appearing, and every car maker has it in their high-end line. And then we will experience a change in how we look at mobility. So people will not own cars anymore, but they will buy mobility. So they will purchase a trip from A to B, and they will use all sorts of transportation along the way, trains, planes, automobiles, and so on. So there's no need to own a car anymore. So, but what you want, you arrive, let's say, in Frankfurt, and you want to go to Munich, so you take the train, and then you go to the car sharing place, and you pick up your rental or your car sharing thing and drop it somewhere else a little later. So you don't want to futz around with a very modern UI or so, but you bring your iPad or your Android pad or your whatever pad in, and this needs to connect to the automobile and display in a way that the user wants, and not how the car maker has decided in this wisdom. So I think this will be, in 10 years from now, we will see, and actually it's already happening if I look at the European automotive industry or transportation industry. This fight is already going on, so you see fleets by BMW standing in the towns, car sharing fleets with little minis, or car sharing in Stuttgart. You go, obviously, Mercedes has parked their car sharing fleets, and they start these cooperations with the train providers, with the airline providers, and this will have a large impact, by far more than we can foresee by now, on how these cars look in the inside and how they will be used.
Yeah, so in brief, answering the questions, how will it look like in 5 years? I don't know. I guess if I were to guess, I'll probably look at some technologies that are out there that start to come out as we speak. I'm talking about like being able to control video games with your hands, or the Google glasses where you can control navigating the internet with your eyes, or the helmets that the military pilots are going to be using. So is it 5 years out? Probably not, maybe 10. But I would probably venture to guess that some of those technologies will kind of end up in their use in the car.
And I just have one final question, which is really share with the audience. When you guys are considering an investment or an acquisition, what are you looking for? Start with you or anything like that?
We don't invest or acquire anybody, so.
Yeah. Go right to the investment.
So when I am evaluating a potential target for investment, first and foremost for me, Chris doesn't have to deal with this as much probably, it has to be very strategic in nature to GM, and there has to be buy-in from the technical community. So we go through a pretty thorough review process and ensure that this is something that GM is interested in. It's better than what we already have. And ultimately, we want to implement this in our vehicles. So that is a key factor, as well as then you get into your kind of your traditional venture capital, valuation analysis and understanding who the employees are, understanding who's on the board, the direction of the company, size of the market, so on and so forth. And as well for me, one of the key factors that I look for as well is that there's multiple business avenues. So it's not just automotive. Automotive, absolutely, I want you to be in automotive and I want to see it in one of our vehicles. But let's say we get 2 years into development and it doesn't look like it's going to work out for a million different reasons. If you've got other business avenues to sell your product and generate revenue, I view that as a very large positive.
I don't think there's any set roadmap in terms of what criteria we look to check the box on for venture capital funding. I think really it's kind of specific to each opportunity. Of course, we have our general key criteria we like to, specifically at Fontanelles, what we're really looking to, and what John mentioned at GM Ventures, is it doesn't have to be a strategic application to our company, but it needs to be a company that has a strategic fit with our partners network. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to invest in companies, and the companies have to touch on the next generation mobility space. And right there, that eliminates some of the companies that come to us that are only kind of tangentially related to what we're really looking at. And if it's not a good kind of core fit to what our story is, whether it's transportation as a whole, automotive specific, and really thinking about kind of what these big global trends are going to be over the next 10 years as we put another 3 billion cars on the next 10 years. But over the next several decades, we put 3 billion more cars on the road. And so if it's a good core fit, that's great. Then we move on to, is this something that we can be really actionable with? Is this something that the company has made great progress up to point A? And what we really look to do is we look to come in and say, okay, you're at point A right now, we can make the right introductions, we can roll up our sleeves and really get involved, and we can get you to point B together. That is really kind of the core criteria of what we're looking for. Obviously, we've kind of got our normal standards of, we look at a certain deal size of X million to X million, and the like is typical with venture capital, but more specific to transportation, it's really kind of fitting within our own partners, networks, and companies that we can help scale in as fast as an efficient manner as possible.
At this time, I'll turn it over to you, audience. We have about 15 minutes open for questions. Would you like to get started?
Hi. First of all, my name is Winston, and my question is in regarding to something I read about called the Intelligent Transportation System. What I would like to know from either of you is the Intelligent Transportation System just within the United States, or does it fit with the United States, Mexico, and Canada?
Yeah, intelligent transportation systems kind of just generally refers to a lot of the smart infrastructure and systems that are being developed to solve a lot of these mobility challenges that we're looking at. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk over the last several years, and really for longer than that, that we're moving towards a future where we're seeing increasing urbanization rates, and over the next 20 years, we'll see hundreds of cities with populations over 5 million, and quite a few over 10 million. And with that comes increasing problems in our global transportation infrastructure. So out of that, there's been a lot of initiatives with both within the U.S. as well as internationally. And so there's been a lot of money, primarily from the government, in terms of research that's been spent on developing and supporting an ecosystem of companies that can come up with technologies that will help alleviate those problems. And so in the US, we have several organizations, as well as we have kind of this governing body that's funded, well, not governing body, kind of a national organization that helps to bring these companies together, and that's called ITSA, ITS America, short for Intelligent Transportation Systems. But internationally, you look at what's being spent on ITS, it's pretty significant. Countries like Korea and Japan spend 6 to 8 times what the US spends on these types of systems, and part of that has to do with they're dealing with smaller land mass and greater problems from a transportation standpoint right there. But this is really an area that I think that we're going to see more investment over time. It's been a little bit challenging without having a long-term highway funding bill. There's been these issues with where does the money come from long-term, and how do we make an investment long-term if we're only looking 1 to 2 years out into the future. So ideally, with more longer-term government funding, it's something that we'd see more adoption here in the US. And largely, ITS solutions are somewhat ubiquitous. A solution that works in one country can oftentimes be modified or tailored to work in another country. We think that's really what we're going to see here in the future is a lot of these solutions that are currently gaining a lot of traction in Australia and Southeast Asia and the EU are going to start making their way over here to the United States, and you're going to see a lot more smart applications in transportation.
Just again, one other real interesting fact is that globally, there's a big push to centralize on a frequency band that will work in all countries. And I think everyone but Japan, and I'm not sure Japan was still up in arms, but are setting aside. In the U.S. it's called DSRC, Digital Short Range Communication. But across the globe, they're trying to set up similar frequency bands so that equipment will work country to country. So there is a big international push for this.
The 2 other comments that I'll make is to that point, from a manufacturer's perspective, we don't want to have to design and build vehicles specific to regions. All the OEMs have made a strong push to have global architectures, where you can build them for Japan, you can build them for China, you can build them in the US, Europe, wherever. In addition to that, with the spectrum discussions, what's really interesting is most of our research that's been going on as far as urban mobility and intelligent transportation systems, our teams actually spend most of their time out of the country, out of the US. They're over in Asia, they're over in Europe, kind of evaluating because they spend the most money, they are doing the most development, and a lot of that's really because they have the most issues right now. They have more urban mobility issues than the US does. But the focus has really been overseas, and we send teams overseas to evaluate what is going on, what developments are being made, and then we come back and we have our discussions with various regional transit authorities about potential for future integration and applications.
Thank you.
2 things. I just wanted to find out about, one thing you brought up is the risk involved in new technologies and safety and government regulation and everything else, so that would obviously push some of the development to places where they don't have that environment. Agriculture are way ahead of where you guys are. We're talking about autonomous vehicles in the field doing stuff with multiple vehicles coordinating, and they're all driverless. So, and those are being delivered much shorter than the 5-year time frame. And as well as military. So is there any effort to take these, to get into those technologies and to pool resources so you're not, what efforts are happening in that area?
So, interestingly enough, John Deere recently joined Geneva, and I know I had a lot of discussions with John Deere. I know exactly what you're talking about. They can control to within 2 centimeters side to side.
Yep.
The whole field. It's amazing what they're doing. So we're also with Geneva. We also have like Volvo Truck, and a lot of heavy truck folks are moving into that realm. They have a lot of asset tracking type solutions. So it's a nice marriage of automotive that has more volume than those guys, but the technology that they bring in, and maybe a marriage of the two. Aircraft, and that is a little bit outside of our reach right now, but it's not, not out of the possibility, especially with infotainment systems, a lot of synergies there.
So while the aerospace and as you mentioned, agriculture and other areas are pretty well off, like there's a lot of standards, a lot of regulations, DO 178C, etc., for industry. It took a little while for them to really get together over these standards that at least regulates how these safety critical systems are going to be built. It looks like they will all follow the ISO 26262, at least. I don't know about the Americans, but I know that's for Europe and Japan. And I think that's a very important step that they took. Also, they took DO 330 as a basis for their tools development. So all these things are now coming into role, and I think it's another 5 years before these standards are established, the processes in the automotive industry are established and followed, and we see these things rolling out. So yes, I agree with you. The auto industry is like 10 years behind aerospace, I would guess. And medical equipment, for example, similar. But they have learned, and I guess they are catching up fast.
So my question was, the word platform was used, and I was hoping somebody could maybe define it a little bit more precisely. And the second question is, are the conditions ripe for the emergence of such a platform? I mean, I'm assuming a platform is going to mean loss of control from the individual players in that platform, and maybe somebody could elaborate on that point.
So platform means a lot of things to a lot of people. From my tier 1 perspective, we define it as a micro with an OS. And we used to tack it on a little further and say, okay, this tuner with that micro creates a platform. But in the context of software, in the context of Geneva, really what we're trying to do with regard to Geneva, we've never really called it a platform, but in essence it is the main output of Geneva is a compliance spec, a compliance program. So that is what we'll be using to try to maintain consistency, and that's where when one individual company writes software, they would love for it to work with a GM, a PSA, a BMW, a Nissan, all these vehicles that are all part of the ecosystem. That is a difficult thing. There's no question about that. We've seen Bluetooth SIG come out with their compliance program. It's very rigorous. But even then, every individual phone usually has 1 or 2 bug fixes that you have to work around on a recurring every 3 or 4 month basis, updating vehicles over the air, etc. for that. So it's a complicated situation, but we are trying to mitigate that again with the compliance program.
Actually, it's an interesting question that you're asking. I would like to distinguish between the technical platform, like Geneva and the Linux kernel, and a couple of drivers, and I would like to, on the other hand, look at the economical platform that something like this could constitute. And here it gets really interesting. iOS is a typical platform that has spurred an ecosystem on top of it, where you find all sorts of niches where people go and do this and that and so, and use the platform. Apple has provided certain guidelines, and like Microsoft has for the Windows platform, if you want certain guidelines under which this platform can be extended or you can add to this ecosystem. In the automotive industry, at least the companies that I'm dealing with have a hard time to imagine that, because for many, many years they have worked in supply chains, and supply chain means the OEM tells the supplier exactly what to do, more or less exactly what to do, and it's really hard for an outsider, so for third parties, to add something to this vehicle. Now, I mentioned this before, it will be really interesting to see how this world changes and how new applications can come into the car. Example, there was a question, how will the UI of the future will be and how can we get to this? An interesting experiment might be to allow the outside, the ecosystem, whoever this will be.
Developers now. A car sharing company, they in essence create a marketplace for people who have cars that otherwise are sitting idle in a parking garage because they're at work, to allow someone else to come and utilize that vehicle for a fee. And so what they're doing through the power of OnStar is they're allowing the renter to access the vehicle using their smartphone. So they approach the vehicle, hit a button, because they've already made a reservation. The system knows that that vehicle is for them at that time. Hit a button, car unlocks, they get access, and they have access to the vehicle during the rental period. So we're starting to go down that path of bringing in the developers because we realize we can't actually build out all of this functionality on our own.
Hi, John Ramelli. Quick question as it relates to user interface. We're seeing this convergence of all this infotainment and telemetry in vehicle, and obviously now we're going to bring 5 million radio stations into the vehicle. What happened to heads-up display? Are we going to see that? Is it coming back?
I don't think heads-up display has necessarily gone anywhere. It's still available, and we have played around with increasing its functionality as well. We've also seen some movement towards full windshield heads-up display. Okay, so heads-up display across the whole way. In fact, I want to say it was Audi at CES. Actually had a full heads-up display windshield that also incorporated gesture recognition. So you could, it was augmented reality. You're swiping things around with your hands. The problem that you run into though is, how distracting is that for the driver, right? There's some issues even for the very basic ones where it's just showing you your speed, things like that. You can see through it. You can see through to the road, but is the fact that that object is in your field of view, is that distracting? Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't think it's gone anywhere. I think it's just with all the regulatory agencies that we battle with on a daily basis, it still needs to be more proven out before you're going to see some of these full-blown augmented reality heads-up display implementations. I mean, we're certainly looking at it, integrating your telematics, your navigation, so that where you have a little arrow saying that you've got to turn on your center stack, it's actually going to be up on the windshield saying, and it's going to map directly to the street, and it's going to show you the stop signs, things like that. It's just not quite ready yet for full.
3 years, 5 years?
Probably, yeah, 5 years. 5 years always seems to be the magic number. At least that's what I'm always told.
Well, if we could take it a step further, with the eventual introduction of autonomous vehicles, would that be in symmetry with personal avatars that they would either engage you or you engage them in terms of making, reservations at a restaurant, or the avatar reminding the driver that there's a meeting coming up, or to get milk that night, everything like that you see perhaps. What was that movie, I, Robot, with Will Smith? We've all seen it, but when is that, 15, 20 years out?
Yeah, we just actually did a research study with everyday users, pretty broad spectrum of folks, with the avatar. And interestingly enough, most people did not want, they want the voice interaction of the avatar. So the text back at you when you do a gesture, or you maybe even ask a question if you've got a distributed voice recognition system. But the avatar themselves, and maybe it's a resolution of that avatar, maybe it's people just aren't ready for that. But it was interesting. The feedback was they don't want to see the face, but they like the content. Just one study.
I think another version of this is not necessarily the avatar itself, but what we're trying to do in a lot of ways is, outside of the vehicle, you're completely connected, right? You got a smartphone that manages everything. It's got your calendar. It tells you what you need to do. You can search for things. Any question you have, you can bring out a nav system. All of these things. One of the things that we're trying to do is make that seamless integration into the vehicle, so that once you get into the vehicle, for instance, and it knows that you've got a meeting in 30 minutes, and it knows that you like to get coffee at Starbucks, and there's a Starbucks on the way there. It perhaps can alert you to the fact that there is a Starbucks on the way. Or, as well, for instance, there's traffic, there's congestion, there's construction, whatever. It knows that you have a meeting in 30 minutes, diverts you another way, right? So we're looking to try to get this like seamless integration where you carry in your connectivity outside of the vehicle into the vehicle, and it can make certain recommendations for you, but we don't want to make it too intrusive as well at the same time. So there's that fine balance.
Do you have any more questions? Oh. There's one in the back.
First of all, thank you for coming here tonight, being a, I've been listening intently. I'm wondering what your roles are to help focus the entrepreneur community to try and give you, each of your companies, that which you need. How do we find that out so we can begin the process together? Instead of hit and miss. I think you might want to use this, but I propose it and it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay, I'll start with that. That's an excellent question. I'm going to speak on behalf of the Genevian as opposed to Vista on this one. But from the entrepreneurial community, with respect to an in-vehicle infotainment system, we as an organization are looking to the likes. Again, I'm going to pick on Massimo business here, but we look to the likes of Livio to help us define an API that our infotainment middleware can link out into when we're going out into the cloud. So within Geneva, we encourage, we almost require competition at every phase, from the tier 1 to the silicon provider to the OS provider, but also to the services provider. So we ensure that if Livio wanted to write an API for connected services within Visteon, that we open that up to other on-board type services, and folks would write that together. But I think there's a big opportunity within the entrepreneurial community to help with that, or even design. Again, I'm moving a little bit on a different thread, but designing apps within the vehicle that'll work within more of a sandbox space, which most of the OEMs are going to have within the infotainment system in the near future.
And I guess speaking from the standpoint of being a capital provider, for those of you that were at Techonomy a week or two ago, you might have seen Josh Linkner of Detroit Venture Partners speak, and one of the comments he had there was that to have a really strong entrepreneurial culture, you need your 3 pillars. You need good ideas, you need talented people, and you need access to capital. And one of those items that's missing from that, and I think of it kind of being the glue that pulls all those pillars together, is you need a collaborative environment. And you look at other entrepreneurial communities, and the reason why they've been so successful is because they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to fail and learn from their experiences. So I think that's something that, as I look at SI Detroit and all these wonderful events that are being done here, and really we've got great events lined up for the rest of the year within the tech community downtown here. We're really starting to see that collaborative environment start to come together. But from a capital provider standpoint, we're really on that 3rd pillar. We're on the standpoint of providing that access to capital. And the way that we do that, and the way we think of our interaction with the entrepreneurial community, is clearly defining our investment mandate and what we're looking for, and meeting as many great, bright minds and seeing as many great ideas out there so that we can find the company that kind of checks all of our boxes and meets what our criteria is and fund them. And hopefully, we'll have in the stable at some point a good batch of companies that are headquartered here in Detroit doing great things within the industry. And as we think about companies that aren't in Detroit, what we are trying to do is we're trying to bring their connections or bring our connections to those companies so that they have some degree of Detroit presence, whether that's business development networks out here in Michigan so that they can get connected to the tier 1s, tier 2s, and the OEMs. And so that's really kind of how I think about like my role and our company's role within the entrepreneurial community.
The only other thing I would add is I do two things. So whenever I'm interacting with a potential investment party, we go through a very lengthy process on the commercial and the technical side, working with people from R&D, from engineering, and one of two things happens. Either for some reason it doesn't work out and we don't end up pursuing the investment at the end, at which point we provide feedback to that company. A lot of times we'll do testing and we'll explain to them this is what was lacking in the testing, right? So you didn't meet our criteria, we needed to do X, Y, and Z, and it only did X and Y, and you need to continue to work on Z. The other aspect is what will happen sometimes, we do pursue an investment with them, and all of our investments come with some form of a strategic relationship, whether that's a commercial agreement, a statement of advanced development work, some construct like that. So that creates a relationship with the technical community, with engineering, who does a very good job of kind of defining what the end output needs to look like, and so that everyone is aligned as we begin to kind of go down the path of getting this thing to production in our vehicles.
I think we'll wrap it up. I think you have one last question over here.
I would like to also
Go
give a
ahead.
short
Go ahead.
answer, okay? Because I think it's important. So we do two things. We continue to provide the Eclipse platform and to enrich it and bring more and more technology to this platform. On the other hand, we would like to help consumer organizations where software is a strategic need for them, like automotive companies, like power providers, like aerospace companies, and so on, to understand and enable that they can actually build together with others. They are the exact software that they need for
analysis of urban, mobility and things of that nature. Where does law enforcement come into play with this whole parameter? Because, 5-10 years down the road, if you get a ticket, does your car cut off? And, those type of implications. And does the advances in technology happen, well, you all probably know more than I do, a little more quicker for law enforcement to be, ahead of the game and things of that nature?
Well, just an interesting point on that. So the city of the future, right, where everything's autonomous, you don't have to worry about speeding tickets anymore, right? If the speed limit's 65, your car's going 65, right? Now, leading up to that, if you're not aware, there is certain functionality even today through OnStar. So if your vehicle is stolen, the police can locate it. They can work with OnStar to actually turn the engine off in that vehicle, have it come to the side of the road, and then they can make whatever arrest they need to make. Now, getting to the point where that's a slippery slope, though, as far as kind of those baby steps that we talked about earlier. Whether or not the police will and different authorities will have access into the vehicle to just automatically know you were in a 65 doing 70, and you get a ticket in the mail the next day. I don't know if we'll ever see that, but you never know.
I have a quick funny story. So I was in Italy last week and I downloaded an app that allows for avoiding law enforcement, meaning that your phone starts vibrating like crazy if you're close to a speed trap. So I guess that's an angle. I'm not sure to answer your question, but.
You need to download that app. All right, well, I'd like to thank Kyle, Chris, John, Ralph, and Massimo tonight.